Hey everybody, it is Uncle Mike, and today is the 20th of June, 2022. I have an interview, I guess that's the right word, a conversation I had with someone I've been sitting on for about a month. And his name is MJ, Michael Jackson. That's literally his name, it's Michael Jackson. And I met him in Baltimore. And I'm going to talk to you about MJ in a moment, but before that, I'm going to do a little bit of a commercial. As I said, it's the 20th. Today's Monday. I'm working on this program, which is called There's No Such Thing as Monday, and I'll be talking a lot about that in the days and weeks to come. So it's funny when I say it's Monday. But the reason why I bring that up is in a few days I will be going down to Austin for a few events, and to cover my travel costs I am selling some wares. So let me go and show you guys what I am selling. Perhaps you've seen these before. These are my the drawstring bags which I make. Real heavy-duty hemp canvas. These are actual bank bags from the U.S. Mint. And I turned them into these incredibly functional bags. Some people use them as forger bags. I use them as traveler bags. You could throw, all sorts of stuff in it, and, you know how a bag works. They begin like this. Just like a cut right there. Here's one. My good friend Paul, Kentucky Paul, had sent me many of these bags. And then what happens is fold it over, sewed down, and you make a pocket, a little place right here where you can put the rope in. I'll make a patch, and I'll sew the patch in. This doesn't have the drawstring in, and that's my process. Here's where I keep all of my crafting materials. The rope, the embroidery thread, which I use. I pre-cut all of the leather patches. That's how you make the holes, needles, scissors, so forth. And so I have right now, I've got five which I have for sale. I mean, I use most of them. I use them for my own personal stuff. I got two more to make. Included in the bag is going to be a signed copy of the Rites of the 40th Parallel, and I thought I have them with me, but I don't. But there'll be 4 colored postcards with all sorts of cool information about the Susquehanna River and the 40th Parallel included with it. So I want to go and sell 5 of these, $125 per bag, and with the book. If you are interested, send me an email. I'll include the email address down below. And, when they're gone, they're gone. So let's go and do this. Hopefully that can cover all my costs. So, okay, let's go talk about MJ. So I've been out of Baltimore for about a month now. And I've been really, really weighing in my mind, how I want to go and frame up that experience and share that experience. And I've been thinking about making a really good video. I've been thinking about maybe even turning it into a book. I've always been wanting to write something, but, I've never actually sat down to do that. I come from a family of writers, and I write daily. I just don't, I haven't actually tried to write a book yet. But this seems like, one of the topics which I would write about. Baltimore was a really significant time in my life, as is right now in Nome Countryside, which is the next phase and the next part of my own personal journey. And, I'm grateful to at least have some witnesses, as I talk about it. And there are certain characters, if you will, that showed up in my life which were immensely significant to me during that significant time. And MJ is definitely, if not the top, one of the top influences during my 108 days in Baltimore. And part of me didn't really want to talk about MJ because I want to keep it to myself. I didn't want to go and share all that I learned and experienced with MJ, but as the time has grown between me and Baltimore, it's not quite as personal. I feel more willing to talk about it, I suppose. And this interview, this discussion which he and I had, it may have been on the last day there. So MJ, how would I describe MJ? And I'm always inspired I try to be inspired by every single person I meet. I try to look for like their special qualities and see how I can be influenced or inspired by that. But it's rare for me personally to enamored, maybe that's the right word, to put someone up on a pedestal. I don't do that, just for whatever reason. And it's not exactly I'm putting him up on the pedestal, but MJ, the way he carried himself and where it met me in my life, I could not stop listening to what he had to say. And so he has this magnetism, this really, really strong magnetism. Whenever you got a strong magnet, it's equally as repelling and as pulling. That's what a magnet does. It's got two sides. And not everyone can handle what MJ has to say and how he says it. But for me personally, it was immensely he pulled me in, and he gave me a fire and a strength and a courage at exactly when I needed all of those sort of things. So MJ's, I guess you could call him a philosopher, but he's immensely practical. But just listening to his ideas and the way he is able to articulate and verbalize them is just, for me, it hit me in a really profound way. But I'm not the only one. He has a big influence, I think, in a lot of people's lives. He is very active within Baltimore in a mentoring aspect with people, young people within Baltimore specifically, moving them out of the sort of mental construct in which they were born into one of entrepreneurship and of empowerment and self-care and self-love and just, really being able to thrive in the world. And he also is a foundation to his elders, the way he supports and holds them. And I found myself not only getting to know MJ on a personal level, because he spent quite a bit of time in the house, I also got to see him in action, in these different sort of ways. And I got to meet a whole lot of different people who, I might not have been able to have interacted with had it not been through the conduit of MJ. So, excuse me. Let me give a couple examples of, how MJ, some of the memories I have of things which MJ has said. So, whenever you would refer to, or anyone would refer to, Leakin Park, so if you could recall from any of the images or videos I've done in the past about the house in Baltimore, the house on Prospect, it sat on a ridge and it overlooked this park, and I talked about it a lot. And it was a spectacular view. And if MJ would ever hear, if he'd hear you refer to it as a park, he'll call you out. He'll call you out on anything. And he'll be like, "This ain't no park." It's like, this is reality. You know, that is reality. What you're looking at, what you are calling a park, is reality. Those trees and the water and the plants and the animals, that's reality. The fact that you see it as a park, you know, you see it through the construct of a municipality, of a government agency that carved out this area and said, hey, here's your park, and now you're seeing it as something special as opposed to like what it is, the same thing which all of us are. You know, you're seeing it backwards. And I always enjoyed when he would say that. I mean, if you've been listening to anything I've said for years, you know, that obviously resonates with a perspective which I hold. So there was that. Another thing, this is a funny story. So it was the last day I was there. It was the last day I was in living in the house of Prospect. And me and Paul Wall and MJ, and the three of us had been spending a lot of time together. And we're all loading up my car, and Paul Wall says, he's like, man, now that you're leaving, he's saying this to me, he's like, I'm going to be the only white guy left in the house. And MJ just like stops in his tracks, and he gets real serious real fast. And he looks at me real serious, and he's like, the moment you become a white guy, I become a black guy. And then this thing that we're doing here, it can't happen. And they'll go a little bit further and they'll be like, you know what, you know, and you can't identify with a color. Like it's an impossibility to identify with a color. You can identify with a culture. It's like you can identify with being European, saying that to me or Paul Wall. MJ would say he can identify with the Moorish culture, and that's a little bit of a more accurate identification than simply color. But if you can get to the place, if you could get to the first cause behind us all, if you can identify with spirit, that which enlivens, you know, the same thing that enlivens me, which enlivens you and enlivens, you know, everything that we can see within this realm. Well, if you can get and identify with that, well, now we can actually do something. Now we can start working at the first creative level. And so that's kind of like, you know, that's Mike's version, bringing in a little bit of MJ's perspective. MJ doesn't, you know, he's a hard man to kind of track down. You know, both like living in Baltimore, he would just show up. You never knew when he was coming, when he was going, and so forth. And for any of you who are just going to be watching, you know, here on the computer world, he doesn't really have much social media. I don't think he's got like YouTube or doesn't do anything like that, though. You know, in my opinion, he should. He does have an Instagram page, and I'll include that link. You know, I would suggest everyone to, you know, if you want to show a little bit of love, you know, at the very least, follow him on Instagram. You know, he's involved with a variety of enterprises, everything from like car washes to t-shirt shops, to like he's running something for the FAA in a hangar in BWI Airport. I mean, the guy's got his hands in a lot of different fires. So, you know, if you're interested in supporting in other ways, you know, you could reach out to him through Instagram. I think that's the only way you're going to be able to get in touch with him, and you know, see what goes from there. So anyway, with that being said, here's the interview. So how long have you been like coming to this area, like the trail? Like I know you've told me that you've been walking here for a while.
Right. So I used to live on the other end of this trailhead here. I used to live at the top of the trailhead. Okay. Right. So I would say that probably was, I moved from there probably 8 years ago, and I lived there for 5 years. Okay. Right. So we'll say I started coming here like 13 years ago. 13 years ago. Yeah. And this is one of my favorite stories. Like this is the sort of stuff that really tickles me. Is you tell the story how you've told me the story about how you would walk these trails. Yes. And then you would look up at where we're sitting right now, or this general area, right? Yes. So it's in Baltimore, right? At this particular area, it's like big, like these houses are very, very massive. And they're family homes.
Okay.
Like mansions almost.
Okay.
In the neighborhood I lived in, it's row houses.
Okay.
Right. And so, you know, you could either turn left and go to drugs and things like that, or go right and go into the woods. Right. So I had children. So my children needed to play. So I just felt it safer to bring them down here and watch them run around, and it could be us. And so that's how we got the affinity to be out here, right? Because it was safer, and it was, you know, we could connect to, you know, I could connect with my children better, you know. So that's how that kind of started.
And when you're down there, I'm trying to get into focus, like the bottom of where the trail is, and it's disappointing because, I mean, disappointing is not the right. You can't capture it on film. When you're down there looking up, looking at where we're sitting right now at this house, one of the other houses, like what can you explain kind of that perspective? Like what like how big they look or how far away they look?
Yeah. All right. So and it's kind of alarming too.
Okay.
For better, right? For more. So you want change and you want more, right? So as I'm walking in these woods, and you're coming through, and you see woods, and then you start to see houses, and then you look up on top of a hill, and there are these humongous houses, and you start to thinking like, well, how do people even get houses like that? And then how do you get a house on a hill like that? And then like, how much money do you have to get a house on a hill like that, right? And you get to thinking like, man, I wouldn't mind living in a house like that, right? And so like you're saying, like, these houses are really massive on top of these hills up here, right? This one, they're beautiful and they're massive.
You can count 5 stories, right, like from the outside, right, yes.
And then you got that little teeny trailhead down there, right? And you seem so small in it anyway, because the woods are so massive, the trees are so massive. This creek is overwhelming, right? Just being out here is overwhelming. And then you come into what is a little bit of civilization out here, which would be these houses, right? And that's the environment right here. So that's all you have to work with is this woods and like these houses and this trailhead. Okay. And so as you're making sense of all of that, right? And you looking up there, you can only, for me, it just made me want more, right? And I used to say, I wouldn't mind, living in one of those houses.
And so how, you said this was what, like 8-10 years ago or something like that? Those ideas, you were down there, that idea was in your mind, and it was crystallized in your mind enough that we could still remember it.
Yes.
So, okay, can you tell us then how the transition from like your actual experiential reality of like, okay, one day I was down there thinking about this, and now I'm sitting where I'm sitting right here looking down at that, like the meeting of Scotty and like the creation of what we're in, like just walk us through in a regular life, like how that happened, where you guys met, when you found out about this house and you're like, I used to look at this house.
Yeah, so I was on my own path.
Okay.
I was unfolding, because we're all unfolding, right? So I was unfolding in my own journey, and holding images in my own head, things I've learned through these experiences, right? Led me to want to build, want to be a carpenter, right? And so I started doing carpentry, and probably maybe about 14, 15 years ago, I started going to college to be a construction manager, right? So now I never want to go to college before then. I'm in my 30s, and I'm finding myself in college now, and I got a job, and I'm on my front porch reading blueprints, right? And so the only thing I'm thinking is, all right, I got to master my mentality. I got to master this mentality that I have of not being creative as I can be, right? And mind you, I'm learning to read blueprints now. And so this is taking something from 3D and bringing it to life. So this is what I'm learning to do. All right. So as I'm learning to do this, I'm like, I gotta master my mind so I can master building this stuff, right? And you're talking about mentally overcoming some things in yourself to start becoming what you're holding, right? To start getting what you're seeing and what you're saying you want in life, right? So I knew that I had to master my mind and master my build. So that started a journey in itself of experiences to bring out that thing. So now I'm working and I get a job, right? And I lose the job. So now I have to use those carpentry skills to eat now, right? So a gentleman, I meet some developers in the city that's coming through fixing houses in South Baltimore. And I own a car wash in South Baltimore. And they bring their trucks through to get washed. And I have a crew down there, and they liked how I kind of manage my crew and my operation. So we began to talk, and they found out that I was a carpenter. So they asked me, could I come in, help them with some carpentry issues they had in the city, right? And so then they started buying houses, right? So one of the houses they bought was this particular house.
This house which you were looking at.
Right. This house that I had been looking at.
And let me just to put into context to the people who are watching this, like how many houses, like this is a big park, Leakin Park, which is down here. How many actual houses are you able to see from the trail as you walk around? Like, are there a lot, or is it just like few? Like they're just a handful, right?
Yeah, maybe 8.
Like 8. Like we're not talking like there are thousands of houses when you walked and looked up. We're talking 8 out of the theoretically, let's say 1 million houses in Baltimore. Like the house which this guy who he came to your car wash and he saw you in action to ask you to help build was one of the 8 houses which you were thinking about and crystallizing in your mind some 10 years prior.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazier than that because it was of 3.
Okay.
Right, because when you get to this particular section, you can only see 3.
There are only 3. You're absolutely right.
Right. So, and this one, it was in the middle. Right. So, it kind of stuck out. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. So it made you look at it. Right. From the trailhead, you had to see it. Right. So when when you buy it, coming from the street level, you really don't know this is where it's at. You coming from the street and walking through the woods is 2 different realities are coming here. Right. So when we first came, I didn't know this was the spot. I knew we were in this general location. Okay. Right, but I hadn't seen the house from the house. I always seen it from the creek, right? So Scotty was like, we need to clear this out so we can see the creek. Right, so once we cleaned it out and we could see the creek, we were down there and we looked back up and I'm like, wow, this is it. So I'm trying to tell Scotty, but of course, it's not his experience. So he's in his experience. So I'm like, dude, like I've seen this. Like I saw myself here. It's like the deja vu because now I done cleared it out and I'm back at the point and looking up. So it's like 13, well not 13, but probably 10 years ago at this point because we've been here doing this for 3 years. So it's probably 10 years at that point. So I'm like, 10 years ago I was coming through here looking at these places, man, like wow, wow, wow. And now they're part of Scotty's dope ass places, you know what I mean? So it's cool, So like just like real quickly, like compared to the condition of what the house is now with the decks and the inside versus what it looked like when you first were brought into the project to assist Scotty in terms of getting it into this position, like how much change, how much transformation physically has this house gone through? 100%.
100%.
90%.
90%.
90%.
Right.
The only thing that didn't change is like the outside shell. Right. Right. It's a complete total metamorphosis. Right. So we went in. It wasn't too much gut work we had to do, but we did have to go in and do some repairs inside. We painted the whole house completely white. Like the whole house inside, completely white. We had to clear this hills. We had to clear it. Unfortunately, some trees came down so we could have this picturesque view, this opening we had. So we had to clear this out. So it was trees and shrubbery, that thick, all the way up. all the way up. We had to clean that out. It was, so if you can imagine, from there over to that house, this thick all the way down. We came through here, 5 guys in like 2 months, 3 months in the summertime, and cleared this out so we could have this view.
All right. I've got two questions.
Okay.
One's going to be easy one, or like a short one, and then I want to go. The other one's a little bit more broad.
Okay.
So you mentioned, and you told us the story. You walked us through, like, kind of like this, and I'm going to just use the word synchronicity just because it's a label word, or like it's a label to describe the mystical experience of, like, you literally 10 years ago kind of saw this house, and then just the natural unfolding of life brought you intimately to the transformation of this structure into what it is now and what's becoming.
Yes.
So I showed you a couple days ago a piece of artwork which I made probably about 10 years ago when I was living in Lancaster. 10 years ago, I certainly didn't know you. 10 years ago, I certainly didn't know Scotty. I didn't know either one of you, maybe even 10 months, definitely not 10 months ago. But when you see that picture which I made 10 years ago, and you look at it in context of this very, very unique view which we have, you can see that they're kind of one and the same.
Absolutely.
And then when you go and you look at that away from just like what Mike's had his experience, but then you put it in context to, like, you had one of those experiences too. Like how do you make sense with that? How do you hold those two coincidences, synchronicities, whatever we want to say, to this spot, to us meeting here, to this coming together? Like, how do you, if you were to formulate that into words, how would you try to explain that to someone?
So that would be that would be kind of hard, right?
that was my easy question.
Yeah, that would be kind of hard because it's a matter of perspective.
Okay.
And it's a matter of perception.
Okay.
How you see yourself in this dispensation, right? And what do you see yourself doing, and what do you see yourself being?
Okay.
So that would be first and foremost in me trying to explain what's going on with us. Right?
Okay.
So as a visionary, as a creator, as a creative, right? Life is about convergences. It's about ingredients. It's about bringing things together to make a thing happen, right? So when visionaries view their life, it's about a coming together, right? It's like a gathering. It's not a takeaway.
Okay.
It's not a takeaway. So I'm going to say that, like, your journey is leading you somewhere. Your individual life journey is leading you somewhere, and you're having an experience, right? Most people aren't really into their experiences. They're into other people's experiences, right? So when it comes to them having this experience, they're not even reflecting on what's going on, right? So at that point, I couldn't even have this conversation, if you understand what I'm saying, about why we coalesced at this place, because they wouldn't be able to keep up. But if they understood being creative and gathering, right, a gathering happening for the creation itself, as co-creators that we are, as visionaries, because why are we envisioning things? Why are we creating? Like, why are we waking up every day? So that's why I say it's about why you're here and how you see yourself, right? So I see myself as a creator, right? A creative. I want to make a difference in this world, and I believe that's how you are, right? So your journey has unfolded to that place, right? But there's a bigger picture going on at the same time, right? And that's kind of why we perhaps incarnated here. You know what I'm saying? For a bigger picture, right? Other than what our individual experiences is about, right? So that's kind of how I would explain that. So we're here for a bigger convergence of future that has to come about, right? Now, you didn't know that, but you were having visions of it, because we're visionaries and we're creatives. So you were having these experiences. So because you were reflecting on your creation, you're able to draw it, because as a blueprint, right? Like how I'm telling you, I learned how to read blueprints, right? So now We're looking at blueprints on how to create reality. This house was not here. Somebody had to make a blueprint. Somebody had to read that blueprint and create it. So that's how I would explain you with the Vulcan swords, you with, everything that you create. It's not just a creation, it's a blueprint on how to create, peace in your life. You know what I'm saying? How to create love, how to be free, how to be true, right? And how to execute justice. So we were able to meet at places like that because that's what I believe we're here to bring about, to make a difference in a place where it is, but it's so chaotic because you have a lot of things converging together on this earth. Now, I know I blew it out a lot, right? But it's that's a macro version of the micro of you and I and Scotty converging here, right? As spirits, souls, bodies. And then you got a planet the same way, where all of these things is happening on a macro level, right? But nobody's reflecting on that. Everybody's into their individual experience. And more importantly, reading books about other people's experiences that in past form, that was in the past, right? So we're not even building the future. We're trying to recreate a past, right? So yeah, that's what I would say. I could carry long, you know how I do.
All right, well, so then here's the last question. All right, so then what is your vision for what's unfolding here at this place at 4505 Prospect Circle? What's going on here?
We're healing.
But I'm being maybe not even so metaphorical, like the people who are coming here, what you're doing here, and can you walk us a little bit through that?
Yeah, so I mean literally healing. So that could be metaphor.
Okay, but you're saying literally. So okay, yes.
Literally. So there's a discussion that we all need to have with each other in love, right? And we need places where we can reflect and have those conversations together. So when I was small, my mother showed me, she was a Jehovah's Witness, and she showed me in this book called My Book of Bible Stories, people of all nationalities and races together. In the book it had people, little children laying on lions and stuff, right? Like, so when you give a child that, like children believe in Easter bunnies and Santa Claus. So if like my mother gave me that as a child, not an Easter bunny, not a Santa Claus. That's the reality she gave me. And I've been working to build that. So when I come across people who work in that same blueprint, that same confine, right? I want us to come together and build what I saw in that book that day, right? And I believe it's possible. You and I sitting out here, we talking, it's birds right here while we're talking, just flying, eating this food right here, right? It's foxes and everything running across the trail. It's deers following us up and down the trail. So it's not just about, here it's not about being in nature, it's understanding your connection as to and, through nature. You know what I'm saying? So that's not, everybody's having a philosophical, mystical conversation about it. But at some point the rubber got to meet the road. So can you embody everything that you're talking about? With this, in this place right here, like it's whatever you learn, whatever skin color you think you have, whatever you think you know, whatever the think you've earned